Did you ask the owner of the house for permission? I asked my daughter-in-law as she stood on my porch with 4 massive suitcases and a smug expression that told me she thought she'd already won a game I hadn't even realized we were playing. She looked at me like I was the one who had lost my mind, laughing off my question as if it were a joke. But the look in my eyes must have told her I was deadly serious, because her smile faltered just for a second before she tried to push past me into my own foyer. I didn't move an inch, blocking the doorway, and I need to ask you all right now, would you let someone move into your home without a single phone call, or am I the bitter in-law she's currently claiming I am on social media? Please tell me if I was wrong for what I did next, because by the end of this day, my entire family was in an absolute uproar, and I was being called every name in the book just for protecting my own peace and the house I worked 40 years to pay off. To understand how we got to this moment on my porch, you have to understand the dynamic between my son, Mark, and his wife, Chloe. Mark has always been a bit of a pushover, a trait he definitely didn't get from me or his father, and when he met Chloe 5 years ago, it was like he completely lost his backbone. Chloe is what I like to call a lifestyle curator. She doesn't have a steady job, but she spends all day posting photos of expensive coffee, designer shoes she probably can't afford, and inspirational quotes about manifesting wealth while she lives off Mark's modest salary as a mid-level manager. I tried to be the supportive mother-in-law for years, I really did. I welcomed her into the family, bought them a very generous wedding gift, and even helped them with a down payment on a small condo. But Chloe always wanted more. She didn't want a starter home. She wanted the finished product immediately. She constantly made snide remarks about my house, a beautiful 4-bedroom craftsman in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, calling it dated or too big for one person. Ever since my husband passed away 3 years ago, I knew she had her eyes on my property, but I never imagined she'd have the audacity to try and take it by force. The trouble really started about 6 months ago when Mark called me in tears. He told me they were drowning in debt. Apparently, Chloe had convinced him to take out a second mortgage to fund a business venture of hers, some kind of luxury travel blog that involved staying at 5-star resorts they couldn't afford. The business failed, the debt piled up, and they were facing foreclosure on their condo. My heart broke for my son, and I offered to help them find a financial planner or even stay in my guest room for a few weeks while they looked for a cheap rental. But Chloe didn't want a guest room, and she certainly didn't want a cheap rental. She told Mark, within my earshot, that it was ridiculous for me to live in such a large house alone while they struggled. I ignored the comment at the time, thinking it was just stress talking, but then the suggestions started. Every Sunday dinner, Chloe would talk about how much potential my house had if it were renovated, and how it would be the perfect multi-generational family home. I kept my mouth shut and just passed the mashed potatoes, but the tension was building like a pressure cooker. 2 weeks ago, things took a turn for the weird. Chloe stopped making snarky comments and suddenly became the perfect daughter-in-law. She was sending me flowers, texting me daily to check in, and even offered to come over and help me garden. I should have known something was up. Then Mark called me and asked if he could drop off a few boxes of seasonal clothes to store in my attic since their condo was getting cramped. I agreed, thinking I was being a helpful mother. A few boxes turned into a dozen. Then a small trailer of furniture appeared in my driveway while I was at the grocery store. When I called Mark to ask what was going on, he sounded incredibly nervous and just said, "Mom, we're just transitioning, don't worry about it, we'll talk soon." I had a sinking feeling in my gut, but I tried to stay positive. That was until this morning, when I heard a loud thud on my porch and opened the door to find Chloe, 4 suitcases, and a locksmith standing behind her. She didn't even say hello. She just looked at the locksmith and pointed at my front door, saying, "This is the one. We need the locks changed and a smart key system installed." I was stunned. I stepped outside, and that's when I asked her, "Did you ask the owner of the house for permission?" She laughed, a high-pitched fake sound, and said, "Oh, Diane, don't be dramatic. Mark and I talked about it. The condo is gone, and it's just silly for us to pay rent somewhere else when you have all this extra space. We're moving in today to help you take care of the place. It's better for everyone." She actually tried to hand the locksmith a work order. I looked the locksmith in the eye and said, "I am the sole owner of this property, and I have not authorized any work. If you touch my door, I will call the police for attempted breaking and entering." The locksmith, bless him, saw the fire in my eyes, grabbed his bag, and practically ran back to his van. Chloe's face turned a shade of purple I've never seen before. She started screaming that I was being selfish. That Mark was my only son, and I was making them homeless. So, that is the situation I was standing in. My daughter-in-law was literally trying to force her way into my home, claiming it was her right because she was family, while my son was nowhere to be found, clearly too ashamed or too weak to face me himself. I was standing on my own porch, being berated and insulted in front of my neighbors, all because I refused to let her colonize my life. Before I tell you what happened next, because it gets so much more intense than just a porch confrontation, I want you to pause and comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have let them in because family is family? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? I really want to know if you think I was being too harsh, or if she crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Once the locksmith sped away, Chloe didn't back down. She grabbed her suitcases and tried to barge past me again, screaming that Mark had given her his blessing, and that half the stuff in the house was going to be hers anyway one day. That was the final straw. I took a deep breath, stepped back inside, and locked the deadbolt. I could hear her pounding on the door, shouting that she was going to call Mark and that I'd be sorry. I didn't wait for him to call me. I called my lawyer immediately. You see, I had been prepared for something like this ever since she started eyeing my deed. I had already had my lawyer draft a formal no trespass notice and a cease and desist because of the furniture they'd secretly moved into my attic. While Chloe was outside screaming, I was on the phone organizing a junk removal service. About an hour later, Mark's car screeched into the driveway. He jumped out, looking frazzled, and tried to mediate. He told me, "Mom, please, we have nowhere else to go. The bank took the condo this morning. We just need a few months." I looked at him through the window and said, "Mark, I offered you a guest room and financial help months ago. Instead, you and your wife tried to hire a locksmith to take over my house while I was standing in it. You didn't ask. You tried to colonize. That is not how a guest behaves." Just then, the junk removal truck pulled up. I had given them authorization to clear out the attic, everything Mark had dropped off under false pretenses. As the movers started carrying their seasonal clothes and furniture out to the truck to be taken to a storage unit I had paid for 1 month of out of the kindness of my heart, Chloe went absolutely ballistic. She was filming the whole thing on her phone, crying and telling her followers that I was throwing a pregnant woman out on the street. That was news to me. I looked at Mark and asked, "Is she pregnant?" Mark looked at the ground, his face beet red, and muttered, "No, Mom, she's just saying that for the video." I felt a coldness settle over me then. I realized my son had completely lost his moral compass under her influence. I told them both that the storage unit location was in an envelope on the porch, and if they didn't leave my property in 5 minutes, I was calling the police to have them trespassed. Chloe tried one last-ditch effort, screaming that she'd make sure I never saw my future grandchildren, but I just closed the curtains. They eventually left, leaving a trail of tire marks on my lawn. The aftermath was brutal. My phone blew up with messages from distant relatives who had seen Chloe's tearful live stream. I was the villain of the family for a full 48 hours. But then, I posted my own video. Not a dramatic one, just a clear, calm explanation of the locksmith incident, including the footage from my Ring doorbell camera showing her trying to force her way in while I asked her who the owner was. The tide turned instantly. People saw the locksmith's confusion and Chloe's aggression. Even Mark's father's side of the family reached out to apologize for believing her. Mark and Chloe are currently living in a tiny studio apartment on the other side of town. Mark finally reached out to me last week, without Chloe knowing, to apologize. He admitted that she had convinced him I wanted them to move in and that I was just playing hard to get. I told him I love him, but until he gets his life and his marriage in order, he isn't welcome in my home. I've changed my own locks professionally this time and installed a full security system. This whole experience taught me that family isn't a blank check for disrespect. You can love someone and still have to lock the door against them if they don't respect your boundaries. I lost a bit of my relationship with my son, but I kept my sanity and my home. Was I the evil in-law? Maybe in her story I am, but in my story I'm just a woman who knows her worth and won't let anyone, not even family, treat her like a doormat. Like this video if you were on my side and think I did the right thing by standing my ground. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and dealing with entitled family members. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'm curious to see if any of you have dealt with a lifestyle curator like Chloe. I'll see you all in the next story.